NDPA presents the Water Safety Champion Podcast.
Welcome back to the next episode of the NDPA Water Safety Champions Podcast. I'm Adam Katchmarchi, the CEO of the NDPA, joined today by one half of the Water Safety Odd Couple. Today I have the esteemed privilege to be joined by none other than Alan Korn. How you doing today, Alan?
Good, Adam, and hello, Juliene.
Yeah, and Alan, it's good to see you back on the podcast. Alyssa's been eating up a lot of our recording slots, so I don't know if she's trying to become the more popular half of the Odd Couple, more out there, or...
It's already the case. He's the better known and better liked, and both are justified.
Well, I'm surprised we get a listenership. So it's exciting that we have a lot of voices happening in water safety. Well, let's get right to it. Today's Water Safety Champion podcast guest is Juliene Hefter, the Executive Director and CEO at the Association of Aquatic Professionals and a longtime friend. Juliene, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm all excited.
Well, we are excited to have you, and let's just jump right in, Juliene. What is your water story?
Geez, it's always interesting when people ask me that, because I started out basically at about age 5. My mother gave me the opportunity to either take ballet lessons or go into swimming. And for some reason, I chose swimming and started swimming pretty much competitively from day one. I guess I had a little bit of a zing for swimming and kind of was a natural at it. So I started at age 5 in swim club, swam throughout grade school, high school, college, master's swimming, and beyond. I get in the pool every once in a while now. I just finished a brand new pool in our backyard, so I'm excited about that. But so, that's kind of how I started swimming. And then it was one of those things where I guess I took it from being a competitive swimmer, swimming at state and nationals. Heck, a couple of my records just went down in high school
Oh, really?
a handful of years ago, which was really cool. I'm like, no record should last for 30 years, especially with all the new introductions of flip turns and everything else. But when I was 15, took the lifeguarding class, became a lifeguard, became a swim instructor. And then I enjoyed it so much, became a lifeguard instructor, and then went on to become an instructor trainer in both lifeguarding and water safety. And, I've really had a lot of opportunities. And I always tell people, in my hometown, we had an 80,000 square foot man-made lake. It was a lake. You looked at the surface of the water, you could see the surface, you couldn't see anything below. So that's kind of how I started my career in aquatics. And I still go back to my hometown and tell people, it's amazing, because by doing what I did, I've been able to become what I've been able to become. Yeah. And accomplish what I've been able to become. And a lot of people don't really think about that, how they start. And I always tell beginning lifeguard people, you're just starting out in the industry, but don't look at it as a temporary job. This could become a career, and you could really make a difference. And I think that was one of the biggest things in aquatics that I really wanted to do, is not just on a local level, because that's how I got involved as a lifeguard. And, I've lifeguarded and run aquatic facilities from school districts, park and rec, YMCAs, man-made lakes, and riverfront facilities. So I've had a lot of experience that way, but it really kind of took a turn for me when I was able to graduate from college. I have a degree in recreational leadership, and I minored in psychology. So it kind of fit the bill. I always wanted to be a cruise director. I went into college thinking I was going to be a cruise director. And then I learned that you had to stay up like 24/7 all night long, and you never got any sleep. And I definitely need my sleep, so that wouldn't have worked for me. But that's kind of how I started in lacrosse. And then I ended up getting my first full-time job in my hometown. So went back to start my career.
Well, yeah, I want to ask, because I always find this interesting with people who started young in aquatics. And I think you kind of answered this with the cruise director piece, but Like I had a completely different interest, growing up, and it was going to be journalism and communications technology and all that fun stuff, which still get to dabble in, with the podcasts and the virtual stuff we do. But I remember there was one day where I was just like, I don't want to do that anymore. I love this whole lifeguard pool thing I'm doing, and I think I want to go to school for that. My parents were a little concerned when I came home and said that, but I always find that curious, like, because I don't think some people realized where that kind of impetus or spark happened, that I could make a career out of this. It's not just something I like doing as a summer job.
Well, the interesting part is being a competitive swimmer, and I was decent. I mean, I wasn't Olympic level, but I held my own and could do a really good job. I actually got recruited by a number of colleges, and I was getting offered scholarships. UNLV, University of Wyoming, Laramie, Milwaukee. So of course I picked the one school that I couldn't get offered anything at, which was UW-La Crosse. But the reason I went to UW-La Crosse was because they had a professor there that could get people into the cruise lines. Now, mind you, I'd never been on a cruise in my life.
Yep.
So I had no clue what that was, but they also had a recreational degree. So it kind of fit in. And when I kind of switched into that recreational leadership, that was my degree, but kind of took a little bit of a turn. I knew really early on what I wanted to do. And I think a big part of that was just, I loved being involved in sports, and I loved being involved in swimming. And when I started being able to teach people how to swim and be a lifeguard, it just kind of lit a fire, I think. And, we always talk about the passion aquatics people have. And I think I've been lucky that I've had that from day one, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adam, we kind of buried the lead here a little bit. When Juliene was introducing herself, she said she just put in her own personal pool. Now that's interesting to me, that what someone who is an expert in running pools, the safety features of pools, what they've seen that they like, what they've seen that they don't like. What does your pool look like? What did you choose to do in order to make it a safe, fun environment?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the pool professionals I met with, I'm talking to them for the first 5 minutes and they're like, let me guess, you've done pools all your life. And I'm like, yes.
Yes.
And, I had a bit of a run-in with one of the inspectors because I disagreed with what they require here only. We are in Queen Creek now in Arizona, and I absolutely love it. But when we were in Mesa, they required alarms on all the doors, self-latching, self-closing, but then alarms on the doors and the windows. So, every window of ours going to the backyard had an alarm on. We don't even have any children. I don't even know if any children will be at our home ever, but right away. So the alarms were on everything. In Queen Creek, they only require the self-latching, self-closing doors. So I'm like arguing with them that I don't think it's safe enough, because this door opens, it closes. I have no idea that it ever opened. So he's like, well, you can put more things on it. I'm like, oh, who can I go talk to about this? Because, it was very concerning to me because Arizona has a very high drowning rate. And every single community has different rules and regulations. So, most of them don't require any type of a fence at all around it. Now, we have a 6-foot black wall all the way around our yard. We have the self-latching, self-closing gate. I also have a code lock on the outside of it. So if you're a child, you're not getting into our backyard in any way, shape, or form. But most places around here don't do that. So, you go around the neighborhood, nobody else has a lock on their gate but us. And of course, my husband's like, oh my gosh, you just put a gory, orange lock on your gate. And I'm like, yeah, we did. And it's staying there. And nobody leaves it open. And there's a sign on it that the door can't be left open if our landscapers are in or whatever. So, those type of things. But it's really interesting how I don't want to say anything bad about it, but I think there needs to be a lot more work. And when I was talking to the inspector, I said, I'd love to come to a meeting and let you know, some things that should be in place. Although our neighbors, post on the Facebook page how, oh my gosh, it's terrible. We have to do this. We have to do that. I'm like, oh my gosh, here's a free drowning prevention program, really trying to educate them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, Adam and I can help you with that when you're ready to motivate, because we've got all the example legislations, the codes. I've got a stack of them here. I know this is an audio podcast, but I'll hold it up anyway, that, you can steal from in order to improve either your locality or but it's, of course, I'm not surprised that when you're talking with your code official, you wanted to do what was required plus a little bit more, even though you don't have young children in your home.
Oh, correct. And he said the same thing. You're allowed to do anything you want. I'm like, yeah, I know, but here's the thing. The door, I was trying to explain it to him, and then he goes, well, you're right. I have small children at home. And then we got into that discussion. So I'm like, there needs to be more layers of protection. We always talk about those layers of protection, and you can never put enough in place.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the discussion I had with him. So hopefully we can take that, a little further down the line.
Well, this is one of the unique challenges Alan and I talk about quite a bit, is the fact that, just given our government structure in the US, a lot of this is left up to the local communities, the townships, the cities, the villages to decide for themselves. And oftentimes it's left in the building code process. There's not further ordinances or regulations put in place. What Alan and I would probably think about it, state statute law. A lot of that does not exist across this country from a water safety perspective. And when you think about, there's 3,000 plus counties in this country, we need 3,000 plus Julienes out there at the local level willing to go to their local town council or city council meeting or meet with their county commissioners to say, look, I care about this, and this is, solvable if we just put a few of these items in place.
Well, and I think, it's unfortunate. And I've said this from day one being involved in aquatics. There's so much gray area. This county does this county does this county does nothing, and it's too bad. And I really, and I'll wait because you're going to ask me in a perfect world what I can do, you said, but,
Yeah.
I really, there's one wish that I have down the line, and we can talk about that later, of what really needs to occur in aquatic safety. And, Adam, you and I have discussed this quite a bit. We have, and I just wrote an article on it. Drowning prevention education has so many different layers. You have specific layers for NDPA. AOAP has our free Respect the Water Drowning Prevention campaign. We have a variety of layers. They're all very similar, but nothing's wrong. Like some people will say, oh my gosh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do this. You can't do, we need to do this. Let's put as many layers of protection in place and support everybody, no matter what those layers are, because layers fail. And we all know that. And everybody says, oh, we need that constant, direct, uninterrupted supervision at all times. Well, that's the one that fails. We need to have that in place, but that's the one that fails. So we need to have those extra layers, and whatever they may be, we have to have those in place, and we need to support each other. So whether your layers might be different than our layers, we're promoting your layers all the time. We just introduced new PSAs that we're working on, and I can talk about that a little bit later if you have another question. But
yeah,
your layers have it's respect, RESP, and each one has one. The first one is recognition, which is not on the Abby's Hope one. It's not even on the NDPA one, but it's a good one. To kind of, before you get into the nitty gritty, is to understand your surroundings, recognize the R in respect, recognize, is there a lifeguard? Is there enough lifeguards? What's the conditions? If it's open bodies of water, what is the condition and quality of the parent? So you're absolutely right. There's more to it than just, supervision, layers and fencing. All of that is important, but there's other ways to get the message out there, and your respect program does that. It's a little different than some of the others.
And it is, and I think it was created by a great group of individuals. I mean, they worked on it for a number of years, and they've adjusted and changed it. But I think it was just trying to be I shouldn't say as all inclusive as possible, because there's layers missing in ours too. But I think to really try to cover as much as we possibly could and getting the information out there, and especially because a lot of the people that use our program are people that run and operate aquatic facilities, and they're training other people. You know, if you've looked at ours, we've got PowerPoint presentations, we've got the PSAs. We were blessed to work with Matt Biondi, Elizabeth Beisel, Dana Vollmer, and we're going to be working with Summer Sanders this upcoming year. We're excited about. We've got some new books that are coming out for our AOAP Water Watcher program, which so many people have Water Watcher programs. It's amazing. And then being able to really just share those with, you know, the children's books and those PSAs, cards, whatever you can do. And, you know, Adam for NDPA and you guys, I mean, everybody has so many different wonderful programs. We've been trying to share those on our website as much as possible also for any of them. We have a request going out shortly to any and all drowning prevention organizations to see if we can share links to their websites on ours, because we want that everybody's information out there, not just ours.
Permission granted.
What?
Permission granted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, but I think that's a really important point too, because, you know, in the last episode with Connie Harvey, we talked a lot about the different ways the drownings happen to different communities, right? And, you know, where Abby's Hope is based in Minneapolis, there's a huge Somali community in Minneapolis that, you know, to every community, every culture, every piece of this country operates differently. And that's the melting pot that is the United States of America. But with that, not every one message is going to work or apply to everyone else. And that's where, you know, it's funny, it actually came up in my conversation with Connie. We kind of laughed about it, where so oftentimes people think that we are all competing against each other. And so often what I think people are surprised about when I say this in the water safety space specifically is we don't compete against the American Red Cross or AOAP. If you use their programs, fantastic. If you use Abby's Hope, fantastic. As long as you're having the water safety, you know, conversation, your resources are based on sound information. It's all about what's going to fit the demographic and the community you're serving best. And that's what I think the glorious part of having all of these different programs and resources out there are.
And you just hit it on the head. And I think, Adam, a big part of our partnership is because of that, because we're just trying to get the message out there. And, you know, we talk about that all the time in collaborations. And, you know, it's unfortunate because, I mean, you've seen it, we've seen it, the arguments online sometimes about, no, you can't do this, or yes, you should be doing this, and you're not doing this right, and you're doing this. Let's all just do something. Let's put something in place and support everything that's out there. Now, things that are unsafe, or, you know, we might question some things, but we are trying to just put all these layers of protection in place. And I do expert witness work for fatal and non-fatal drownings, and it is just heart-wrenching. I mean, I've talked to you about this. I'm getting to the point where I just don't know if I can do it anymore because it is so heart-wrenching. And it's something that is so important to get the information out there, but we really need to try and make a difference. And that's why we're here. We're all trying to make a difference in drowning prevention. And anything that I can do to help anybody, that's what I'm all about. And that's why I do what I do, to try and make a difference and try and help people out. And we always say, you know, we're a one-stop shop for aquatic professionals, but I get phone calls all the time from, you know, individuals and communities asking me about, you know, maybe questioning something that maybe their local aquatics program is doing that maybe they don't agree with, or maybe they have a question about and they don't feel they can ask. You know, of course, I'm always saying you should go straight to your community and talk to them about it, but here's the standard of care in the industry or something along that line. But I think that's why it's so great when we see so many people working together.
Yeah.
Juliene, I've gotten to know your organization better because of the very productive and effective partnership now with the NDPA, and our combined conference coming up in February next year will be our second or third one that we're doing together. But it's my understanding, and I know this is correct, that the vast majority of your membership are professional aquatics facilities. What are the unique safety or even management issues or factors for a professional aquatic center as opposed to your personal pool or the residential pools that drownings happen? I'm thinking bathing load and chemical storage, but you would know better. What is kind of unique to that, to your profession and your membership?
Sure. Well, I think you mentioned a couple of them. Yes, we're talking about, we have a bather load. It's not our backyard pool where we might have 10, 20 or a family gathering of people or just a few people. We have a lot of people coming into our facilities. And I think, talking about that chemical safety aspect of it, you just brought that up as well. But a big thing that I think is one of the biggest challenges that recreation and aquatic professionals have are consistency in what we do. So, and by that, I mean, what?
Between pools or
I think between all pools.
Mm-hmm.
So it's consistency in enforcing rules and regulations. What are those policies and procedures? How old may a child be before they can be at the swimming facility by themselves? How tall do they have to be? What are we doing for weak or non-swimmers? Because a lot of our facilities start at 4 feet deep. We have young children coming to our facilities. So, what do we do for those individuals? I am a big proponent for having life jackets for weak or non-swimmers and requiring that Coast Guard approved life jackets are put on everybody. Some people don't agree with that. However, if we're floating them at our pools, they're not under the surface of the water. So I'm a big proponent of that. Our whole association is we give out life jacket grants. But I think one of the biggest things that we find, because I go to so many different pools that are run, either being through my expert witness work or just as an aquatic professional that goes to a lot of pools, the guards that are working sometimes are enforcing rules differently. So I may have policies and procedures that nobody that isn't a strong swimmer can't be here, or you have to be within an arm's reach of your child at all times if they can't stand, or whatever the rule is. It doesn't really matter. I go at 1 o'clock this afternoon and that rule is being enforced. I go at 5 o'clock tonight, nobody's enforcing those rules and regulations. So why do we have those policies or rules in place? And I think that's one of the biggest things that we have a problem with our facilities. Another thing that is huge is, I think, and I'll put my hat on where I used to run facilities, your supervisors don't understand why we do what we do. They don't understand why we have to have those safety rules in place or those policies and procedures. And you let what?
That's a training issue, it sounds like to me.
Well, it's a training issue, but if it's my boss telling me I'm not allowed to enforce that policy and procedure because it might have upset somebody in the community, or an alderman or council member called and complained about it, so now I'm not allowed to do that, that becomes a huge issue. I get calls a lot from aquatic professionals. I used to be the aquatics director at the Fond du Lac School District, and I ran that facility. My nickname was the Whip. I mean, you weren't doing anything you weren't supposed to do, and this is why, and it was safety. I left, and then there was some change in management, and there was a new superintendent of schools, and I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but I will. Now they've changed. Now they allow their swim coaches to be in there with no lifeguard on duty. There was no way that anybody would have been in. I didn't even teach lifeguarding classes without a separate lifeguard on duty. You need to have that separate set of eyes that is doing nothing else but constantly providing that constant, direct, uninterrupted supervision at all times. And you get a superintendent of schools that tells you, no, we're not doing this anymore. The swim team can go in there anytime they want. You give them a key. The swim club can go in there anytime you want. If you don't have lifeguards during the day because you can't get them, you're still going to let people lap swim. Oh my gosh, that is a fatal drowning waiting to occur, whether it's from maybe a massive heart attack someone has or a drowning. And that's where I think some of our biggest concerns come in the industry now, because it's not necessarily the people that are running those facilities directly and being the aquatics director in charge of it. It's their supervisors telling them now that we're not going to do that anymore. And what I have to tell them is document it. Document everything and go, and here's a report, and this is what you need to do. And I provide them with all the information on all the fatal and non-fatal drownings that are occurring during PE classes or swim team practices, and doing whatever I can to help them out. But I think that's one of our biggest challenges that we see in the industry, is that it might not be me who's running the facility directly. It's my supervisor telling me I can't do that.
Mhm.
Well, I'm going to toss out, I mean, I think both of you know I was the aquatics director for my university for quite some time, and I'm still faculty at the university, but I was asked at the early days of the pandemic if I wanted to continue, and my answer was an emphatic no. Please take my name off that wall and I will move offices. And it's not that I didn't love running the lifeguard staff or the pool, and granted, it's nice not having that, as Juliene knows. It's definitely something that you just have on your soul 24/7 when you're running an aquatics facility. But the number one reason I dropped it, and I hopefully no one at administration will listen to this until I'm tenured next year, but the true reason is administration looked at me and said, we're cutting you down to one lifeguard on duty at a time. And my rule was we had 2 or 3 on duty at one time, not maybe watching the pool, but as Julie knows, to do a lot of the rescues and, especially extrication and their CPR and first aid care, those skills are designed to be done with 2 or more people, not as a single, person. And I wasn't going to be charged with running a facility like that. But I know it's easy for me to say because I had, other employment opportunities and other things I was doing. But I get this question all the time from operators is, what should I do? I'm in a rock and a hard place. My policy maker or my supervisor won't support me. As you point out, Juliene, I often hear from PE teachers in my network, my school district won't provide a lifeguard for swim class anymore, but now I'm still supposed to teach swimming and I've got 25 kids in the pool at one time. And, my number one answer is don't do it. But you're looking at someone saying, well, then quit your job. And that's also a difficult predicament. So I agree with you. That's a major issue that we face.
And I think it is one of the biggest ones, Alan. It really is, because I'm getting calls constantly about it. And we have had so many people leave the aquatics profession in the last few years. And COVID had something to do with that. But a lot more now because of that. And exactly what Adam said, we're cutting back to one lifeguard, or we're not having lifeguards. Don't be responsible for it. Document it. And I've had people, and you don't want to leave facilities without somebody that knows what they're doing running them. But if you know what you're doing and you're running it and people won't let you run it safely, that makes it very difficult. And that's why I tell people, document what you're doing, document why you're doing it. Let them know, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And this is why. But we have had a lot of people leave the aquatics as careers in the last few years. And I don't see that changing in the near future.
In a shameless plug, I'm doing a presentation at our combined conference on liability prevention at aquatics facilities. I'm an attorney by training and in part by practice. And that's one of the sessions that I'm going to do. And you talk about documentation, just like a nurse and a doctor documents the chart. It's good to document. And I talked at least 5-6 minutes about that in that presentation. A lot of the sessions that I go to in the conferences that we all go to, we're hearing a lot about lifeguard shortages. This is probably a softball, but confirm for us, it's a real thing out there. Lifeguards, for lots of reasons, you just talked about one I didn't even think of, but it's trouble staffing these pools, which means less hours, closed pools. You're seeing that in reality out there?
We're seeing it a lot. Now, I will say in the last year, we've seen a little bit of a change. We just did a salary survey, and that was a big thing. Here we are paying lifeguards $7 and some cents an hour, or $8 or $9 either an hour. But I can go, and I'm not picking on the fast food industry, but I can go to Burger King and make $15 an hour or $20 an hour, get paid for my training, get paid while I'm doing my training. Right. And lifeguards were expected to pay for their training, not getting, paid for taking the course, paying for the course on their own. But we have seen a little bit of a change now over the last year. A big part of it has to do with providing training for free, providing people an hourly rate while they're taking their training. Now, that's if they can initially pass the swimming skills test, because we're going to have people come in and test them quick and see. But we're seeing that, I think, take a turn, and we've got a lot more facilities that are now open. They're opening more of their facilities and they're getting more lifeguards. A big thing that I'd like to see, and I've talked to the coalition about this and I've seen it with other things, but really having lifeguards listed as first responders. Everywhere, lifeguards should be, they are first responders. So we should have them listed as and noticed as first responders and get the recognition for that, not just being 16-year-old babysitters.
Yeah, it's not a summer job, it's a professional job.
It is.
Yeah. And nomenclature has a lot to do with that.
Yeah. And I do a presentation called Lifeguarding. How do we want the public to perceive us? And it's all about professionalism as lifeguards and how we act on the stand and how we look on the stand and what we do on the stand. People see that. I'm a big opponent for not allowing, lifeguards in bikinis and those type of things. And I'm going to get hammered for this from some people, but it's a uniform. We are there in a uniform, and we don't want to be looked at as just somebody that's there for a tan. And I think that is part of what we're missing in our industry, is that professionalism. And if you're looked at as a professional, you act like a professional a lot.
And you're going to get treated like a professional.
Correct.
It follows, respect follows, even policy follows.
It does. And that's another thing we're missing in our industry. And if I could change one thing as from the lifeguarding industry, it would be that perception of how we want our lifeguards to be perceived by the community. Now with everybody having a video camera on their phones, they're videotaped all the time. And, how are they supposed to be acting from the day they walk in the door? And that was a big thing that I really worked on with my teams. I never said you're my employee, you are my team members. How can we look as a professional team and act? And it makes a huge difference. Now, granted, it depends on where you're located. You go to California to a swimming pool, they're practicing, competitive swimming in little tiny, swimsuits and stuff and whatever. That's just normal for them. But I'm from the Midwest. So, it's just a big thing that I like to say is you're going to be treated how you're perceived, and let's really get perceived as professionals.
Juliene, before we wrap up today, could you talk a little bit about who AOAP is as an organization and maybe how you found your way to AOAP in your current role?
Sure. I'm really I love AOAP. I mean, obviously I've been part of it since the beginning. A core group of us were involved in another organization, and we helped them run an annual conference and their, aquatic section and stuff. And out of the blue, in February of 2011, they decided they weren't doing it anymore. And we're going to change things up. So a core group of us, a few of us decided this, and this is too important to our industry. We have to continue it. So in 2011, a core group of us started the Association of Aquatic Professionals, applied for our 501c3. Farhad Madani was very involved with that from Texas as well. And Kathy Luker from Lincoln Aquatics, handful of other people also, I can't name everybody, but we got together and set it up, and we're ready to run our first conference in 2012. And our exhibitors that we were friends with, our attendees at the conference, we had an amazing first year, and we've grown since then. I was a volunteer for the first 2 years, 2011 till 2013, as I was also the deputy director for the Wisconsin Park and Rec Association, and I ran my own business, Safety First Aquatics. And after 2 years, I'm like, okay, you guys, I can't do this all. We need a full-time, executive director. I've been able to save you guys tons of money. Now we've got some money in the bank. We could pay somebody. And our board at the time decided they met and offered me the position, which I hadn't even been considering it. But I was so passionate about it, and started in 2013 as a full-time executive director. And it's just been amazing what we've accomplished as a team, as a group, as an association, just with our partnerships. And I think that's one of the biggest things, and Adam can, attest to this, because I've been working with him for 6, 7, 8 years to try and get our partnership to where it is today.
Yep.
But it's, that's the biggest thing. So we're all about collaborating. And over the years, if you look at how large our conference has gotten now, and the attendees and the exhibitors, and not just that, but our aquatic professional designation that we have now, and our collaborations with the American Red Cross, Starfish Aquatics, to name a few, TAP, Total Aquatic Program, and we partner with them on things. We're partnering now with the Council Model Aquatic Health Code. They're holding their vote on the code in conjunction with our conference starting this year. It's every 3 years, but they'll be doing that. We've got a MAC track. We're doing an aquatic technician workshop training during the week. We've got various other partnerships that I've been dealing with over the last few weeks that are looking at joining us in some shape or form. I talked to the American Camp Association. I've talked to some other groups as well. So it's just really exciting to see what we're able to accomplish together.
Mm-hmm. What was your attendance in 2011, and what is it now?
Don't quote me on the numbers. I don't know 100%, but we had I think we had 39 companies in the exhibit hall. And because they jumped on board and trusted us, and we had a little over 100 attendees. Last year, we had 152 companies total, and we had 750 attendees for us, and then 250 for NDPA. So we sat right at about 1,000. Yeah. And I just see us growing more and more. We also do online trainings. We do free online trainings for members, non-members. We do lots of different webinars that we offer as well. But it's just really neat to see, and it's kind of exciting because you can go to conferences and there might be more attendees, but not in aquatics. So it's everybody that walks in the door is in aquatics. Everybody that walks in the door is doing some sort of drowning prevention education, running their facilities, however they do. And I think that's just one of the most exciting things. And now with our partnership with NDPA and having families united at our conference, I talked to Adam. This was something that I think we were really missing. We had all the professionals there, but families that have been affected by, fatal or non-fatal drownings, or we've never had these conversations. We've never been able as operators to have conversations with families. And as difficult as it is, it's imperative, because our operators need to realize, because a lot of them, nothing's ever happened at their facilities that substantial. And that's great. We don't want it to, but we really need them to take away the fact that things can happen. And this is why you train your staff, and why you have to train your staff the way we do and be as passionate as we are. And that was one of the biggest things that from our AOAP attendees last year. This year is great because it's going to be more combined. You can do anything you want, basically. But I had so many of them come up to me after walking down that NDPA aisle in the exhibit hall and talking to so many people and seeing your banners, up in the registration area, and just the heartfelt emotions that they had, and the understanding of, this is why we do what we do. This is why we need to do a better job. Even though they might be doing a good job, things can always happen. So to me, it still gives me goosebumps to really think about all the comments we heard last year about just how amazing it was. And that's the important thing about these collaborations and partnerships.
Well, and I will say, Juliene, I think that's why you and I worked so long to try and make this happen, because, what's interesting about NDPA, we have so many different sectors we serve, I think is the right way to say it, because there's so many, from healthcare to first responders to policymakers in communities to public health officials to coalitions around the country. We're all trying to get water safety information out there, but I was so excited to bring our two events together just for that reason, because the aquatic professionals already care about this, right? And it's that further collaboration and connection. I mean, if one facility operator walked down that aisle in the exhibit hall, met with one family foundation and have used their materials, shared the story, collaborated, that's a huge win in my book.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, totally. Well, Juliene, I'm going to give you our final question of the podcast, which is, I am handing you our famous figurative water safety magic wand, and you could change one thing in water safety, big or small. What would that one thing be?
I think one of the biggest things is that I would really love to have for every county, every state, every community, have one standard of care in the industry for water safety in people's backyards, going to pools or at camps. Requirements that are put in place, rules and regulations, policies and procedures, the same types of layers of protection for backyard pools, and just having the support on a federal level for everybody, that we're all those layers of protection have to be put into place, whatever they may be, because my goal would be to never have another drowning happen again. Do we say that's possible? Who knows? But I think that would be the biggest thing that I'd like to see in my lifetime, that we come down to a very succinct, state of the art. Everybody has to do this. So we don't have school districts that are doing their own thing, or community pools that are doing their own thing, or supervisors that can say, no, we're not going to do this because it's not required. Because their only time they're doing it is when it's required by law. Because I didn't do that. I just was deposed on a case, and they didn't even ask me about the entire situation. They were trying to come after me and make me not look like an expert. They're like, well, who do you call? I'm like, people call me. They're like, yeah, but who do you call and ask questions to? I'm like, people call me. So it's, they were trying, that's all they were doing, is trying to get me disqualified as an expert. It didn't matter that somebody drowned in their facility with their client. They didn't even mention that at all. So my passion came out, and I was like, this is so disgusting. We're not even talking about what's at hand to change it so it never happens again. We're talking about, so you don't have to pay out any money, so let's try and disqualify me. And that shouldn't be the way it is. So having those rules and regulations and policies and procedures that are in place, this is the way you do it, you can't not do it, that would be a perfect world for me right now.
Well, your magic wand, I was just going to say, Adam, your magic wand wish is, I'm holding up, even though this is an audio, the action plan. And that's contained in there in about 6 or 8 different ways. So other people, smart people, are consistent with you and share your magic wand wish.
Fantastic.
Well, and I was just going to say, from a policy perspective, right? I mean, this has been one of our biggest challenges, but Alan was central to getting the Virginia Graham Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act passed. And I remember I was at my very early days in the profession, but you heard some kicking and screaming, from people in aquatics and in the pool and spa industry. This is going to irreparably harm the industry, the cost of having to change every pool drain out and every little piece with it. I don't know of a single facility that shut down because of VGB. They changed their pool drains and kept operating, and it created a safer environment. And I'm sure, Alan, all the pieces of having and the challenges of sometimes lobbying for those types of regulations, because we are in many ways an anti-regulation country, and there's a big stem of that in our country. But I point to VGB. It made pools safer. It really did. We haven't had a single fatality from an entrapment since VGB was passed in a public pool.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of exactly what Juliene was talking about, a consistent across the board standard instead of something different in her community, in the District of Columbia, and so forth. If it works, science-backed solution. So it's a good way to sprinkle some fairy dust here, Juliene. That's a good magic wand suggestion.
Absolutely. Well, Juliene, thank you so much for joining us on the Water Safety Champions podcast. You are a true water safety champion, and we are thrilled. I personally am thrilled to get to work with you on a regular basis. And if you haven't yet checked out the 2024 AOAP and DPA conference, you can go to AOAP's website, which is aquaticpros.org, or you can check out ndpa.org, watersafetyconference.com, and they'll all lead you to the conference. We've got an amazing lineup of speakers, exhibitors, attendees in Reno, Nevada, February 12th to the 15th at Grand Sierra Resort. I'm super excited. It's going to be a fantastic event, and we hope you all check it out and join. If you join AOAP and NDPA as a member, you can get an exclusive member discount for joining or attending the conference. So, Juliene, thank you so much. Alan is my co-host. Thank you. We'll see you on our next episode of the Water Safety Champions podcast. Until then, stay safe out there.